Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to talk about The Stand, the new series debuting on CBS All Access, based on the book of the same name by Stephen King. This is the second attempt to bring this particular book to the screen. The first one debuted in 1994, a 4-part miniseries that I recently rewatched, and it still holds up pretty well. There are some things that have not aged very well, but on the whole, it's still a very good watch. The show was created and sometimes directed by Josh Boone, who has only a few credits to his name. He's relatively new. He recently directed The New Mutants, as well as The Fault in Our Stars in 2014. Neither particularly great movies. Before going any further, I'm going to tell you that this is not a spoiler-free video. And while I don't exactly recommend this series, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this until after you have. If you like this video and like my content in general, please subscribe to my channel. Now, as far as my spoiler-free video, I will say it isn't very good. This series is just not very good at all. First up, I'm going to take a moment to criticize CBS All Access, for which this is currently streaming. It's a similar criticism I made of the Picard series in my one review of that series, the first episode of Picard, in that it probably would have been better if they had released at least 3 episodes of that series, if not all of them all at once. The same goes for The Stand. The reason they won't, of course, is simple: money. They want people to continue subscribing, and if they put it all out at once, there's a chance that people might cancel right after. The first 3 episodes of The Stand centered on a few characters. Harold and Stu in the first episode, Barry Underwood and Lloyd Randall in the second. And I feel if they were going to take this approach, the most effective way to do it would be to release all episodes at once. My biggest problem so far with this series is structural. Each episode is told in a non-linear fashion. It ends up jumping all over the place in the narrative. I have no problem with non-linear storytelling. It can be used to great effect. But here, there doesn't seem to be much of an advantage to doing that. In fact, it seems to actively hurt the story they're trying to tell. It kills some narrative tension as it goes along. The book is not structured this way, so I'm not sure why the series needs to be. You already have a pretty compelling and timely story here. That of a deadly contagion basically ending the world. Given what's going on right now, that is a highly timely story. The original miniseries captured the world collapsing, the fear, the horror of that situation, people dying, people that you care about dying in terrifying fashion to great effect. This miniseries almost seems to skip over that. Everything seems very muted and sterile. The first episode spends a significant chunk of time with the character of Harold, played by Owen Teague in the new series. And this to me is a mistake. He's not all that sympathetic of a character. At least not as they've written him in the new series. and not as played by Owen Teague. In the original miniseries, he was played by Corin Nemec of Parker Can't Lose fame, and he was rather obnoxious, so pretty much I feel like in this particular case, the casting is a wash. But in every other instance so far, I prefer the original cast compared to this one. We briefly see Franny with her dying father, and it plays like a dry reading of a book. There's no passion here. Compare this scene to a similar one in the original miniseries when the characters are played by Molly Ringwald and Ken Jenkins of Scrubs fame. And there's a warmth there that is totally missing from the scene in the new miniseries. They very much treat the end of the world with a shrug. There's a moment early on that's emblematic of the problem here. Harold is listening to the radio, and there's a guy who basically shoots himself on the air. There is a moment in the book like this, and then there's a moment that's played in the miniseries with Franny and her father as he's dying. In a miniseries, this is played for complete terror. This is horrifying. Well, in the miniseries, it was more like the host was being shot by the U.S. Army because she was talking about the virus and what was going on, and they wanted to shut her up. People are dying. Society is collapsing. Franny and her father are acting with fear to hearing somebody shot live on the air. How does Harold react to it in the new series? He reacts with a shrug. If the characters don't care what's going on, then why should I? You might say in response, well, that's just Harold's character. Fine, I accept that. Then don't have that moment with him. Have that moment with somebody who would actually react to what's going on. So after spending some time with Harold, we cut to Stu, who is already locked away, held captive in some government facility. The incident that started the whole mess in the first place is saved for pretty much the end of the episode. I don't know why. The incident that directly involves Stu, which brings him into the plot, isn't told till later. And again, I don't know why. None of this helps. It actively distracts, or rather detracts from the narrative. Stu is basically pals with the Doctor, which is contrary to what happens in the book, and contrary to what happens in the original miniseries. In the book, he's at odds with the people holding him captive. He's refusing to cooperate until someone tells him something, because he's scared, and he doesn't know what's going on, and nobody will tell him anything. The miniseries did this very well. This series, not so much. They effectively kill all the drama that would be associated with this situation. They make a change to make this less interesting. Stu Redman is played by James Marsden. He was originally played by Stu Redman in the original series, and that performance is just straight up not going to be topped by anyone. But I thought if someone could pull it off, it would be James Marsden from the X-Men series, and most recently Westworld. But alas, he's not given that much to work with. He ends up having this weird rivalry with a military guy who's escorting him around when they switch facilities that isn't very well played. And when he showed up later to kill Stewart, I didn't even know who he was. I mean, at that point he had the frog throat as a result of the disease, Captain Trips. But I also hadn't seen him in a while at that point, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't even know if he was there to kill the Doctor or Stu. Before managing to escape the facility, Stu ends up talking to General Starkley, played by J.K. Simmons. This didn't happen in the book. It didn't happen in the original miniseries. He was originally played by Ed Harris, and while he didn't get a lot of screen time in the original miniseries, he had more of a presence in that series. Here we get the one scene. Not sure why that decision was made, but the scene isn't very great. It's another boring choice, and it's a way to waste an actor of J.K. Simmons' caliber. In the second episode, we center around the character of Larry Underwood. Now, in the book and in the original miniseries, he's kind of a low-life troublemaker. He gets himself into bad situations with the wrong people, usually involving money. There's an arc in both the original miniseries and the book concerning him becoming more of what he potentially could be. He goes from a low life to a respectable young man with an important job. That arc doesn't really translate in the second episode. Maybe it will as time will go on, but it doesn't really do a good job of starting that arc. In the miniseries, we get an idea of the relationship between Larry and his mother. There isn't very many scenes centered around this, but it's enough. In the new miniseries, that's completely absent. In the new miniseries, he's played by Jovan Adepo, who was actually a co-star in Fences with Denzel Washington. In the original, he was played by Adam Storkey, who has not had that many credits to his name. Only 34 since The Stand. In the new miniseries, he's changed from the book and the old miniseries from a white character to a black character. Now, this doesn't particularly bother me. It will some people. I'm not in league with those people. And I think the reason they made this particular change is to cut out the more problematic aspects of Stephen King's original book. Larry Underwood got famous for basically singing like a black man, as said in both the book and the miniseries. That wouldn't really fly in 2020 or 2021 as it is now. None of that bothers me as long as they craft a compelling character, and so far, not so good. And I don't think that has anything to do with the actor, because his performance in Fences was pretty good. So I know he's capable of crafting a very good performance. But so far he's not given much to work with, much like James Marsden, who plays Stu, and anybody else in this miniseries so far. His first traveling companion is Rada Bleakmore, or Blakemore, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and is played by Heather Graham, who I like as an actress. She's hopelessly miscast here. Rita as a character was actually cut out from the original miniseries. She was replaced by Nadine Cross, which I believe is a move to simplify things in the original miniseries, because it goes from Rita to Nadine to him eventually getting with Lucy. In the book, Rita ends up killing herself, and then Larry meets Nadine, who is spoken for by Randall Flagg, the villain of the piece. In the new movie, she's played by Amber Heard, which again I think is another poor casting choice. In the original, she was played by Laura San Gamako, and she had this edge of craziness from the get-go that made for compelling viewing. Not so much with Amber Heard in the new miniseries, but then again, like a lot of the actors in the series, she just isn't given a lot to do, acting-wise. And I'm half tempted to bring that down to the directing of these episodes, as well as the overall tone of the series, which is very low-key and just not right for this type of story. Also in this episode is a scene between Lloyd and Randall Flagg in the prison where they originally meet. Randall Flagg is played by Alexander Skarsgård, where in the miniseries he was played by Jamie Sheridan. Lloyd Henreid is played by Nat Wolff. In the original miniseries, he was played by Miguel Ferrer. And somehow they managed to even make the villain boring. This scene once again plays out like a dry reading of the book. Jamie Sheridan wasn't exactly perfect as Randall Flagg in the original miniseries, and some of the effects they used later on in the series were a little cheesy, but he managed to capture a charm while also being menacing at the same time. Not so much in Alexander Skarsgård's performance. And again, I don't think this comes down to the actor, because I've seen him in other things and he does great work. Once again, this comes down to a conscious choice by the creative team, and it is the wrong one. One more point before I end this video, because I think I've made my point at this point. The third episode, we have a scene with Glenn Bateman and Stu Redman. Glenn is played by Greg Kinnear, whereas in the original series it was played by Ray Walston. Now, you're not going to top Ray Walston's performance, like you're not going to top Gary Sinise's performance in the original. However, I thought Greg Kinnear would make a good Glenn Bateman. And there's nothing really in this episode that suggests otherwise. The scene in question is one in which Stu discovers some paintings of Mother Abigail, and they realize that they are all having the same dream. This would have way more dramatic impact if we didn't already see them interacting with her in the future timeline, because we're doing this story in non-linear editing fashion. We already know this. We already know that Stu Redman ends up in Boulder, Colorado with Mother Abigail. So this comes back to the way they are choosing to tell this story in non-linear fashion actively kills the drama. It effectively renders this particular scene completely pointless. I guess I should mention the fact that Mother Abigail is played by Whoopi Goldberg. I thought this was a good casting choice when I originally heard about it. But Ruby Dee still shines on the most as Mother Abigail from the original series. When I originally heard that they were making this series, I was excited. I really was looking forward to this series. I thought there was a good chance to upgrade the story for a modern audience, and I was really looking forward to it. So color me disappointed. There's still a chance that the series will get better, but we're already 3 episodes into a 9-episode run, so I don't have high hopes for that. Anyway, that's all I got for you for this video. If you like this video and want to support my channel, there's a couple ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at coreproductions.com. You can join my Facebook group, Corman Productions. You can buy something at the Corman Productions store at Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, comment on this video, and subscribe to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.